This is part 3 to my Pikmin clone series. If you haven't seen part 1, feel free to check it out. We killed God in that one. Well, 3 games into the series and we finally have a great game for once. I want to warn everyone, since this game came out recently, this video will contain spoilers for the whole game. If you want to experience this for the first time, please do so. It's on Game Pass if you have that. If not, you can buy it for pretty cheap, around $25. With that out of the way, let's take a small leap into the world of Tinykin and make a gigantic impact in the process. I want to say calling this game a Pikmin clone in a way feels wrong. Yes, it has a very similar game mechanic to Pikmin, but it learns how to do something familiar in an exciting way. It manages to bring the Pikmin style gameplay we know and love and have it work so well with the fun 3D platformer. In all my years, I never thought a more fast-paced Pikmin style game would ever work, but this game right here proves to me it could work better than I ever could have imagined. I think the simplest way to explain what Tinykin is would be to refresh what our main protagonist says. This is Milodane, and he's from a far, far away planet called Aegis. Throughout history, the people of Aegis were told humans originated from there, and no other planet ever could have humans living there. Milodane decided to go against the norm and declared he believed other human life does exist on other planets, and humans didn't originate from Aegis at all. He came to this idea from all the artifacts and fossils he studied throughout his archaeologist career. He ended up coming across a signal from a far, far away galaxy, and he believes it came from a place of human origins. Milodane ends up finding the planet and decides it's now or never and heads off to explore the planet. His assistant, however, gets left behind for whatever reason. This is how our adventure starts. We're greeted by this moth guy named Ridimi, who is surprised to see us here and tells us he's never seen anything of our kind before. He also tells us he placed these very convenient machines that tell us exactly how to play. What a swell guy, he was ready for us to get here this whole time. He gives us time to learn how to play, and this is where we get accustomed to our main man's controls. Milodane is able to jump and move around as any normal platformer character should. He does have some unique things I love, like his ability to float around in a bubble, plus a fun little soapboard you can get, which is used to get around really fast. I didn't think I would love this as much as I do, but man, this is such a fun ability to just move around and use. The first level also introduces us to the main mechanic of the game that also makes it a Pikmin clone, the Tinykins. Your first Tinykin is the pink ones, who are strong and used to carry stuff around for you. This cutscene plays once you get them, and anytime you get a new Tinykin, a movie will play and they are just beautifully animated. The use of squash and stretching really just adds to how amazing these animations really are. Once you acquire the first Tinykin, you get told what they do by Ridimi, and he even tells you to follow him to move this giant flower pot. He says there's an important item locked under the staircase with no way to get it out without the help of the Tinykins. You learn the flower pot needs 30 Tinykins to move. Obviously, you wouldn't have that number yet, so it's time to go explore for the Tinykins. The Tinykins are quite easy to find since it's just about locating the eggs in the area and then running into them, making it way faster to get a large amount of them without the whole time wasting of murdering and then bringing them back to then make more units. Yeah, that's another thing about Tinykin. There's no combat to speak of. I know to some this is a dreadful thing, but in my opinion, this is a blessing. I would rather have no combat and have more time focused on the platforming and level design than to have pretty bland combat. Trust me, bland combat in Pikmin style games really isn't fun to deal with. The fun from Tinykin and its levels comes from how can I traverse and what can I do with said Tinykins to find what I'm looking for. And I really feel by having the unnecessary combat system, it just would have brought the pace down so much. Well, once you explore the first area enough and find the Tinykins you need, you can move the flower pot to discover the scuba goggles. Ridimi tells you that these are a component that he needs and to bring it back to him. Milodane, not needing any reason to trust him, proceeds to help bring the goggles back to a lab. Ridimi welcomes you to the lab and tells you about a being named Ardwin who lived in the house and how other people saw him as a god, but he more saw him as a sage. He says that Ardwin was building a machine that could be used to go beyond the boundaries of the house, which, to add more insult to injury, Ridimi has been doing this stuff and trying to find these things for his whole life, and we ended up finding a component in less than 10 minutes of just being here. Ridimi somehow located the other 6 items we need, but it won't be easy for us to get them. And he also knows we're stuck here, so we have no other choice but to help if we ever want to get home. We then are introduced to 2 of his friends who are there to help for upgrades and a place to store the side quest objects we find. I'll go ahead and cover these 2 real quick just to get them out of the way. Prattle is here for you to have more collectibles, and you get rewarded with knowledge about the objects you bring in. Most of these objects contain lore, but I'll cover these in a later section. Seeker is here for your upgrades to your bubble floating ability. You upgrade this by getting a certain amount of pollen in the stage, and then you talk to him. I would also say he's mostly optional, but if you want to get all the museum parts, then he's required since some missions require you to have a certain amount of bubbles for your floating ability. There's also 2 other friends here, but I'll cover them later since as of right now, they're not all that important. Once you get used to the controls and stuff here, you can head off to the next area of the house. In this area, we really learn the extent of how much they worship their god. You get shown the entrance to Sanctar, a sacred area for the great Ardwin. You're informed the shield bug named Solaria has a banner you need, but it won't be so easy to get it. You take the key to unlock the door and head on through. Sanctar is a holy place where in the very middle of the map is a church they use to worship and sing Ardwin's sacred canticle. You soon learn that only some bugs can hear his special song, while others can't. The shield bugs ask you for help to somehow broadcast a song to everyone since they're still not sure why only they can hear it. Ridimi then tells you to go see what the little circle item is and why that shield bug is so excited. But the beauty of Tinykin is the fact that the game may try to guide you where you should go. The game still will reward you for doing what you want to do instead. First things first, let's get our new Tinykin, and these guys are the red Tinykin whose only goal in life is to die. These guys are very happy to be used as ammo for blowing whatever you may need, and if you're curious, they do die from this. Once you have them blow up, they don't come back. This level, however, is really fun and pretty huge. Even though these levels are really big, I never felt like there was just space to have space. Everything here felt very compacted enough and worth exploring. The snowboard also makes getting around so much better. This really brings back memories of how DK64 made my childhood mind wonder what things I could accomplish and what order I wanted to do them in. Again, as stated before, the game will give you a path to follow, but you're never forced to do the path right away. For example, I even ended up completing other quests in the level or finding things for them before I even knew what I needed them for, rewarding players for exploring and keeping a good track on things and places in the level. Exploring more of the church, we learned that these bugs are questioning why only the shield bugs can hear the music while really seeing the extent they worship this god. I continue to explore and do some side quests like helping this bug get over his fear of a monster he saw by using this camera to take a picture of it, while also bringing back this aunt's lost kid to her parent by stealing back the black piano key by the bar worker who was using it as a table, which then unlocks the piano for us to explore. The other side quest is going inside the TV to get a gemstone back for a suspicious bug by using the screwdriver. This is a side quest that can only be done after getting the second bubble upgrade. Once inside, we're told we won't get the gemstone till we turn the picture box on for the shield bug. Luckily for my years of working on electronics, this is an easy fix. This gets us a ring pop that was somehow slammed into the VHS part of the TV. Finally, we're on our last quest, and it's to get the radio to play the song to everyone, but the issue being it's missing a play button and has no power. Meaning we have to go find the play button and a way to power the radio on. Thanks to the pink Tinykin, this is an easy process of bringing stuff to the radio, and that's when we're greeted with the most beautiful music to ever exist.
Yes, sir. Big dick, big dick. Big old dick, dick.
3 big balls. Look like we playing tennis. He got a big dick. I think his name Dennis.
We're then rewarded for our efforts, and we get the banner we came here for. Now everyone can hear the amazing music and sing the song of worship. We now bring the banner back to the lab and add another piece to the ship, and while we're here, we get another glider bubble upgrade. Our next item we need for our ship is the big funnel. The big funnel, however, is in Foliana Heights. where it's the heart of the mantis territory. You know, those sweet, beautiful bugs that are known to eat the prey from the ass first to the face. Yeah, those guys. Before we head out, we're finally introduced to the last friends in the main hub area, and they are Mach and Dash, and Garfield. They offer a really cool racing minigame for you to do after you beat a level. Beating these will earn you new costumes from Milodane made by Garfield himself. I'll however cover the races more in a later section since I really love/hate these. Well, with that said and done, we're off to Foliana Heights. We're handed this since it's the only way we'll be let into the new area, but once this is required, it's just as simple as walking in and making it our new home. Foliana Heights is my second favorite world in this whole game. Just love how the green hue of everything looks, and we even acquire my favorite Tinykin in this game. However, don't let this beautiful plant heaven fool you. Apparently the mantises here are quite hostile, and they're already upset before we arrive. They're on a rant about the shadow creatures tools and how they acquired one of the weapons. They tell us these shadow creatures are awful and manipulating all of them, and we have to stop their spies for them. The game also tells us where to start first in a not so subtle way, but this is again Tinykin, so who cares, I can go where I want. Well, it's time to cover the new Tinykin, and these are the green Tinykin. They ended up being my favorite because they're able to be used to form towers and get more vertical distance. At first I wasn't that amazed with them till I started to realize how these guys were making me see levels differently. I started to be more aware of what things around me could give me that reach I needed to either get to a higher place or even places in the level earlier than intended. They helped me start actually trying to notice what objects around me were more beneficial to the platforming, and that's insane. A simple ability like a tower made me start being more aware of my gameplay. After acquiring the Tinykin, we go around doing the tasks here like collecting enough pollen and getting the museum rewards. Our first task was building this frog skeleton, which I ended up having the majority of the parts before I even knew what they were for. Our next quest is another robber quest where we return the ring pop for a museum reward. Also, for you Gen Z kids, a ring pop was just a candy in the shape of a ring. I'm sure they still have them around, but if they don't, wanted to just add this here. Once these two side quests are completed, it's up to us to find the key the mantis had to unlock the ropes around the item we needed. We go to where the mantis subtly told us where to go, and we move this cool inflatable cactus to find the depths of the terrarium, and without fail, as if we just had a lucky guess, the key is here for us to grab. The mantis flee and we take the item for ourselves, but Off-Rocker tells us that the life in the house is nothing but a farce, and he wants someone to already uncover the secrets. We put the next component on the ship, and now it's time to head off to the next area. We head back to Foliana Heights and find the entrance to the new area known as Waters of Balnea is in fact my favorite world in the game. I don't know why I'm a sucker for water areas, and just seeing that hint of blue on everything and how we climbed out of a toilet also makes this area the shit. The issue for this world is the fact these guys stole all of the party equipment that they used to throw massive parties because they're losing sleep. The silverfish are now pissed because they can't do what they're known best for, which is throwing sweet fucking raves, boys! Oh yeah, baby, get that car! It's now up to us to ease the conflict created and bring this once lifeful party fever area back to its former glory. The beetles here are dung beetles, which makes more sense why there's balls of shit around here that give us pollen, which the bugs drink. You know, thinking about it, it's really not that different since the best coffee beans in the world come from civet shit, so kind of the same thing, I guess. We get told by Party Pupa that the silverfish don't fuck with them anymore, to the point that they're now just not even trying to cooperate. Also, I love that his name is Party Pupa, which is like party pooper. This game really just gets better and better. They even closed and locked the doors that would open both areas into one. They also stole the scissors of the city, meaning we have to get those back. We then set off looking for Tinykin and other things we need in this area. This is also where we come across our next Tinykin, the blue Tinykin, who have the power to control electricity for puzzles. And I do have a lot to say about these guys in the next Tinykin we find, but I'll save those for later. For now, the blue Tinykin are only used for puzzles involving the flow of electricity. We make it up to the highest part of the place, and we use our blue Tinykin to open up the path to make it to the silverfish place. The main goal here is to build the party room back to its former glory by getting the things the party organizers need, which if you're like me, you ended up just finding most of this stuff on your own before even talking to them to figure out what you need. Which, I love the fact that this game will, for the most part, give you the option to straight out ask where things are, or reward you for finding it yourself. We even beat another robber's quest by getting him his ring pop, and this was quite fun with some fun and tricky platforming. We then open the washer to wash this guy's teddy bear, who gives us another reward. The last side quest, we bring these two things to Rose and Jack, two lovers separated by the door. Another cool reference, but Rose is a reference to the Rose from the hit movie Titanic, while Jack is a reference to Jack and We unlock it to reunite them in the treasured items. As for the main quest here, we set off to find the required items to get the party, as the cool kids would call it, Cappin' Bustin' Broski. We find the laser pointer, fill the tub with bubbles, and bring the giant boat to really get things crunked. I got so into the party that I tried to take a dive into the water to join in on the fun, just to remember Milo dies from the water because of his clothes, and then I was electrocuted, and the whole party was ruined. We're then rewarded with the scissors, and we take them back to our base. I did also run into an issue here, causing me to have to leave and come back, but it's something that I'll cover later in the video. The issue just seemed like a really weird oversight, but still an issue that I'll bring up. We bring the scissors back to add to our ship, and at this point, it really feels like all is coming together. The next place we have to go to before getting to the real next area is visiting the first area for the second time, but now there's more to do, like unlocking the safe, which I just guessed on the last number and I got it right, and getting pollen. Okay, there's not much to do here, but we get the key and now it's time to go to the next world. The land of Amberos is my least favorite world in the game. Not saying it's bad, far from it, but compared to the other worlds, this one was lacking. I'll again go to more detail later on in the video, but for now, let's cover the side quest and main part of the story. We arrive to see them talking about the great ceremony of Arduin, where they make a giant cake, but only the rich eat it. This goes about as well as you would think, as the poor peasant bugs revolt, causing the rich higher-ups to run and hide in a cabinet. Now the revolt starts, and it's quite the interesting level so far. You get asked by Siros to help calm the conflict by making this cake and sharing it with everyone, meaning it's time to find the ingredients we need to make a cake. While here though, we find our newest Tinykin, the yellow Tinykin, and their power is to build a bridge. As stated before, I have some issues with these guys and the blue Tinykin, but I'll cover that later in the video. First off though, let's cover the side quest and then the main quest. The first side quest here is to make popcorn by bringing the corn to the microwave and figuring out how to power it on. Once the popcorn's made, you'll bring the pieces of popcorn to this guy so he can tell you how great it is for a museum reward. The second side quest is spreading activist posters around the map to spread the word about the revolt, for the cause is just. Finally, it's another robber quest where we grab the gem for him. This is probably the hardest gem quest because the platforming can be a little tricky here, but it can be done with persistence. With all the side quests out of the way, it's time to bake a pretty cake. The ingredients you need to gather is 3 eggs, flour, sugar, baking powder, butter, and finally yogurt. After mixing everything, it's just a matter of bringing the cake mix to the oven to bake this amazing, most beautiful cake ever.
So good and tasty.
Overall, not the most interesting main quest, but it's still interesting to gather everything. Especially how you need to use a toaster to pop toast up to help get into the area where they're all hiding so you can get a key to the fridge. We then get our new item for the ship and bring it home as before. Now, all that stands in our way is one last world. We head back to the very first area, as the location we need is the circus tent area at the top of the map. So Aurelion Park is quite an interesting level. I've always been a fan of circus / amusement park levels, and this easily adds more to the reason why I love areas like this. This area is known for a lot of fast racing and rides, so I'm excited to see this world. We make it inside just for Walter to almost hand us the item we need until Mikey comes and tells Walter something is wrong, which now means we as the main pro tag have to fix that issue. We get offered a challenge where I have to rescue innocent visitors from a broken down train, repair the racetrack, and find Blue Bolt's lost race car, and finally an object of value for the winner of the race. Sounds easy enough, so we accept the offer. The side quests here are pretty alright, first one being to pop these balloons, but the guy who's running the minigame is hiding the ammo. I ended up finding the ammo and popping them before I even talked to him, just to have him tell me no one should have won the game. Next quest is another gym quest, and as before, just do the task, and for this one, it's destroying these hanging asteroids. Then you get the ring pop and give it back to him to then get the next museum reward. The final side quest is fixing the zoo and bringing all the animals back. They're actually just figures, and we find this out by watching these two argue, but we still have to help them out. These guys are pretty hidden, while others you should have no issue finding. Now, the main quest. We save the people on the train, and after getting the train to start again, and boy did this part take quite a while, the car is easy to find. It's just a matter of going and getting the car and bringing it back to where they belong. The trophy is my favorite item to get since you're carrying a giant sword through a big castle area, and you're breaking down the walls while you bring the sword to take down the mighty dragon. It's quite amusing to see this sword thrown into the head of a dinosaur. The last item is the missing track part, and this is where the bridge tinykin are used to build bridges to bring it back down to the main floor. After you gather all of that and place the trophy where it belongs, the race can now begin. What's funny is after the Blue Bolt wins, he's stuck in a flying animation and not moving. Just shows the Chad energy in this man. He T-posed on everyone and does not give two shits. We then get the last part to our ship and take it back ready to finally leave this godforsaken place. But something goes wrong. The ship won't take off. Got this far to have not enough power. Then a hatch in the roof opens up and a long string comes down, giving us the path to the final area. We climb the rope to proceed to the last refuge. Faint music can be heard, and we figure out what's playing it. It's from a radio playing the song the bugs were singing, and the middle of the room looks to be a small house on top of the hill. We then meet two shield bugs who tell me one of them was taking the other to the hospital, but his antenna started twitching badly. So they rushed here just to learn the songs they've been singing to and worshipping wasn't from their god, but from a radio in the attic. The reason why the other bugs couldn't hear it before was their antenna weren't sensitive enough to hear the music. There never was a song from the gods. These two bugs just learned their whole lives they were chasing something never real to begin with. Our final mission is to give these bugs peace, to destroy the music box and stop the music from a false god. Conveniently, there's just enough red tinykin up here to do what we need to do. We grab them and begin to destroy the music box. The next part caught me off guard big time. Someone begins to speak, not just anyone, but Ardwin himself.
My favorite song. Who did that? Who goes there? Show yourselves, ruffians.
Speaking English. Keep in mind, throughout the game, I've heard nothing but gibberish sounds, so to hear someone finally speak my language, it was a what the fuck moment for a second. We had to talk to Ardwin, and we learned something very dark. Ardwin explains that he's been trying to avoid everyone since they take him for a god down in the house. He, however, says he's a pathetic failure. Then he talks about the product that he made was only supposed to shrink people down a little bit, but everything went wrong. Ardwin has been trying to fix his mistakes for a while. To the point even when his body began to fail, he continued to try by forming his dying parts into robotic parts. The house apparently has been stuck in time since 1991, and the bugs now just use the place as their own amusement while he's stuck here in his own prison. This is where we learn people did exist here at one point, meaning Milo Dane was right. But Ardwin then explains where everyone went. He ended up causing the extinction of everyone on the planet after shrinking them down, meaning everyone who was here once is now dead. While telling us this, he says a name and begins to sound like he's crying.
A being that caused the extinction of his own species is more of a demon than a god. Wouldn't you agree? Oh, Lucretia.
Ardwin then snaps out of it and asks us if we can help him get back to the real Earth, one that isn't frozen in time. This is because the tech he needs never existed in 1991, so this is why he just gave up. This is when we tell him we're a descendant of the people from Earth, meaning that life still carried on, just not here. This is when we learn that Aegis was a planet they prepared if life ever went into a peril or a critical threat, meaning the people here had enough time to escape from the planet, meaning also that Ardwin got his wish. The human population continued, just sadly without him. He tells us to take him to Ridme since he has an idea. We take Ardwin there, and Ridme and him have a heartfelt talk, and that's when he learns the ship won't power up, but Milo Dane has had the tool needed from the very start. You see, Milo Dane tried to go here with his assistant, but he was left behind. However, Milo Dane had taken his dog's bone and had had it since he got here. He even pulls it out if you idle long enough. Turns out a normal toy from our planet, but here, this toy can power up a whole capital city, meaning not only Milo Dane can go back home, but Ardwin can finally escape this prison. The thousands of years of pain and suffering he attempted to fix, even after everyone he knew and loved had passed. Those museum rewards we've also been finding add a little more detail to the lore. One of them being a ring. A ring he gave to his special someone, a ring for his wife. Other things here also show how the insects learned what houses are and how to attempt at building them. We even learned that Ardwin had been using hearts to keep him alive even if his own heart had ended up failing years and years ago. Plus a drawing of a water bear is here, and if you don't know much about these guys, they're creatures that are just impossible to kill, and wouldn't you know it, his robot body is designed to look like one of those creatures. To think he spent all this time wanting to make things right, and now, thousands of years later, we can finally grant him that wish. Ardwin then asks us this.
Milo Dane, for thousands of years I hoped to bring humanity back. I never believed that humanity could bring me back. If I remember, there's enough space for two in the machine. Would you accept me as your co-pilot?
We finally set off. Even if he's a false god, the insects here will remember him and everything he's taught them, because no matter what, he will always be a savior to them. Well, that was Tinykin. A wonderful adventure and nice to finally have a Pikmin clone video that did this type of gameplay right, but was also different enough for me to have a reason to play this over Pikmin. That being said, I think it's time to cover what I liked and I didn't like about the game, which for a surprising twist, I'll go over what I didn't like first since it's quite short. The issue with Tinykin honestly are just more personal issues I had, and you may not feel the same, but to start off, let's cover the races, since this is where I started to see an issue with the soap board. The races, as I stated before, are something you can do after beating a level. These require you to be fast on the soap board and learn the mechanics of grinding to get the fastest time possible, and I will say I love these races a lot, but the soap board grinding mechanic doesn't always work. And it got to the point where it made the platinum medals a huge issue to get. For whatever reason, you can do the exact same thing every time with the rails and grinding just to get different results. Majority of the time I would just fall right off, and I'm not sure why. I don't know if I'm leaning too far to one side or the game is just glitching and dropping my grinding. There's also no real indication if the board requires balance to grind here or not. I should again state, when this does work, it's amazing and fun to do, but more often than not, you will get issues like these, making the race segments way harder than needed to be. During the story, you also get these goggles that let you see where objectives and people are. I didn't mention this before because it wasn't that important, but sometimes these goggles won't be able to see what you're trying to find. The issue only really happened one time, but it made it where I had to leave and come back before I was able to see what I was looking for. Again, a very minor issue, and the majority of the time these goggles work fine. Now, I want to cover the two Tinykins I talked about, those being the blue and yellow Tinykins. I want to add this real quick. I love the Tinykins and I will praise them soon enough, but I don't like the blue and I really don't like the yellow Tinykin either. Let's start off with the blue Tinykin, who isn't as bad, but still has a big issue with pacing. The issue with these guys is they're always used in the same puzzle, and you really have to take your time with these because if you place them too far apart, the Tinykin won't connect. Or if you place them too close, then you won't reach the goal in the set number of Tinykins they give you. It's to the point some of these puzzles can take up to 30 blue Tinykins, meaning you're just doing this. At least there is some thinking to it, and if you're smart, you can even clear these puzzles with less Tinykin than the game gives you, but it's just a big pace breaker when I have to take it very slow to set a path, and God forbid I mess the path up and I have to redo it all over again. Personally, I don't hate the blue Tinykins, but I feel there could have been more to them easily. Now onto the yellow Tinykins. I'll be honest, when I saw these guys were used for bridges, I got excited thinking of ways I could use them for distance to help get to other parts of the map. In a way, combining the green and yellow Tinykins for a better horizontal and vertical platforming experience. Maybe even being able to place yellow Tinykins down to make bridges that are now shortcuts for the level. But then I learned that these guys can only be used in specific yellow Tinykin markings on the ground. And that's it. The thought process for these guys is look for the thing on the floor and then build a bridge. This becomes quite annoying in this stage they introduce them in, because there's parts where you gotta take 2 ingredients out of the fridge, and the issue here is to get them to the bowl you end up having to keep building bridges for the pink Tinykin to take it to the bowl. This ends up being really bad since in the levels before, as soon as I sent the pink Tinykin to grab something, I didn't have to baby them to make sure they took it where it needed to go, they just did it. I was able to go do whatever I wanted while they did their job. This would in return bring the benefit of making sure I'm making progress towards the level while they did the boring part of bringing it to where it needed to go. At this level, I can't do that because if I leave, I'll have to come back anyways to build the bridge for them multiple times. Even with over 80 yellow Tinykin, I still didn't have enough to build all the bridges in the level. For first time players, there's no way they're going to want to leave when they have to keep making sure the bridges are there for progression. Yes, you can track the item at any time when it's being carried to see if they're stopped, but then it's a pace breaker to run back to make sure they're moving again. The puzzle for the levels that they use the Tinykins in isn't even thought-provoking in the slightest. It's just build bridge, wait for them to move to the next platform, then build the bridge again. The yellow Tinykin just seemed to be a big waste, and you could have easily done more with them if you wanted. Which is funny because they end up almost being useless in the next level because there is a part where you have to build a bridge to get across, and they do this with the level design instead of having the Tinykin build a bridge. So it really just shows how useless these guys really are. The final issue with the Tinykin is the fact if you send your pink Tinykin to carry anything, you can't drop said item. Meaning you can soft lock yourself out of progression because you need a certain amount of Tinykin, but you can't get that amount because your other Tinykin are stuck holding something. I really only ran into this issue in the third world, but it's an easy fix of just leaving and re-entering the world. Strangely enough, the items you were carrying will be left where they last were. So this brings up the question, why is there just not a button to have them drop whatever they're holding? It seems weird that that's not an option you have, especially when there's an option to whistle for them back, but they still won't drop anything or come back if you press this. With that being said, this is everything I didn't really like about the game. As said before, the only world I didn't like was the world with the yellow tinykin, but when I say I didn't like it, I just mean I still enjoyed my time, just nowhere near as much as the other worlds. Well, now it's time to praise the hell out of this game because this game is such an amazing experience. After playing the last two games, this game is outstandingly beautiful. This world really hits the feeling of retro house from the VHS tapes used as part of the things you can platform on, the old TV and cassette tapes and the radio. I really was just amazed at how beautiful the worlds can be. Even when you're in a toilet pipe, it still looks so good. I even remember I had a video of the game paused and my fiance thought I was looking at a real life house and asked what house is that when she saw it. Then she was amazed it was just the game's graphics. I can't comment on the Switch's or system graphics, but PC looks outstanding. The dust particles that float around really hit the idea that this house has been long abandoned. It makes me sad this game doesn't have ray tracing, but even without it, the lighting is well done here. Seeing the little lights the candles give off and light peeking through the windows and crevices of the house, it's just insane how much charm each world has, and with the various hues and colors of them, I easily could tell one world from the next. These worlds are also quite massive to the point on the Switch version, looking from one end to the other will cause some frame drop. Even with these worlds being so big, I never was overwhelmed with the task at hand, and if anything, always had the mindset eventually I'll figure out where this goes, but till then, I'll keep doing what I'm doing. I'll go ahead and make this clear again. I love every world here, even the one I think that is more mad than the others. There's not a single world in this game that I would dread to come back to if I ever have to return to this game. The side quests also can help a lot to even progressing in the main quest, so I highly recommend doing these. They're for the most part always engaging, and a skilled player can multitask these together to make it less of a chore. If you decide to skip the side quests, then this game can be quite short, but with the side content, I finished the game in around 8 hours. I know to some, this time would be an issue, but for me, I much prefer shorter investing games over 1,000-hour games with nothing really worth sinking that amount of time into. Also, aiming in this game and throwing your tinykin is fast and easy, so it really helps to do said task when your units actually work with you. The camera also helps so much navigating the world, and if Mylodane is ever behind an object, he'll become an easy to spot shadow to make sure you're never unsure where he is, and anything close to the camera will do this dithering effect to make sure you can still see everything at all times. I really do love the variety of personalities the insects have, even if they're all kind of the same insects. They really bring a nice charm to the world and help hit this church and religion aspect and showing how it's a big thing for these guys. But one thing I'm really impressed by is the way Tinykin covers religion. Normally a game would spin it to this corrupt thing in society, so let's break the mold and expose how it's wrong, which is what I even thought the game would be doing, especially in the world with the cake and how they were going to not let the poor bugs eat it. However, the religion in this game is shown to actually have helped the bugs improve their lives and see Ardwin as a god, not because he's an all-powerful being, but because he's someone who came and helped improve their lives and taught them how to live without having to kill anymore. One of the museum artifacts is a spear, and it's mentioned here that thanks to Ardwin, we don't have to live in a time where these would have been needed anymore. It even mentions how he taught them to build houses and other things like that. Again, there's a pretty good amount of lore in these, and we're checking out. Races are also a thing I mentioned, and when these work and you're speeding through the stage to get the best time for the medals, holy shit is this fun. It brings back memories to the extra missions from Team Sonic, learning how to master your moves to get to the end in the time the game asked you to. When I was younger, I really used to hate time stuff in games, but man, now as an adult, I love these types of missions. Also probably why I love Katamari so much, I would spend hours doing these races trying to perfect my time, mostly because the board sometimes didn't work, but I never felt frustrated since restarting is quick and easy. But again, man, when you finally get that insane run, it's a treat to see. The costumes are cute and worth your time doing the races if you want them. You also don't even need to do the platinum times for these costumes, just gold. Adding on to that, the soap board is such a fun mechanic. To the point a casual player will mostly just use it for getting around, but someone who decides to take the time to master it can end up using this to get around everywhere. One cool mechanic with the board is if you hold the board button while jumping off a rope, You'll pull it out, and this gives you more distance from the jump, and now you're going really fast, allowing for fast chaining platforming. Again, the board can even give you enough speed to do crazy jumps with it, and it's worth the time to learn how to use it, especially if you want to get around everywhere faster. I love that you can just chain a soapboard slide into a bubble float, giving Milodane the extra speed he needs for more distance, allowing you to reach some areas in the level a little earlier. It's such a rewarding thing for the player who thinks outside the box. And his bubble floating mechanic, as simple of a hover as it is quite fun to use, especially when you combine the green Tinykin with the soapboard jump into a bubble float. Just so many ways to combine your movesets together. The level design and game itself can teach you these mechanics by letting a player experiment. The game does tell you the simple things at the start, but just like the freedom in its levels, the game gives you as much freedom to experiment with Milodane in his kit. I do love the way he gets more bubbles. He's just apparently getting more soap from his board, and that's how you get more bubbles for your floating thing. Stupid, but charming. As the last thing, I will cover the Tinykin, and after again playing the last 2 games and dealing with Darwin and the Impas, Jesus Christ, are the Tinykin the best controlled units I've ever used. The Tinykin actually listen to your commands, and when something requires a certain Tinykin, the game will automatically have the one ready I need to use instead of like in Hotel Transylvania, there was just a lot of unnecessary switching. What's also crazy is the fact that the Tinykin in my whole time of playing never got stuck on anything. The AI is even programmed well enough to have the Tinykin try to stay on platforms with you. They also don't get stuck because if the Tinykin is ever at a point where they can't get to you, they will just fly over to you with their wings or fling to wherever you may be. I know to some, the random side of your Tinykin shooting over to you like a missile may be immersion breaking, but to me, I couldn't care. You would feel my pain after dealing with the dumbest AI getting stuck on whatever they want many times. Even better, once the Tinykin finishes a task, there's no switching to call them back or having to go to where they are. They automatically will fly back to you, having them ready to be used again. Even though you have an option to whistle for them to come back, the Tinykin for the majority of my playthrough always would come right back right away. Only time I really needed it for was the yellow and blue Tinykin. I also love if you can see the target you have to aim at and can aim at it, the Tinykin will hit it just fine. Even if you're really high up from it, they can still reach it if aiming reticle is able to hit it, and this aiming reticle is also great compared to the other 2 games. I'm actually able to trust where the game wants to aim at, and it's so weird talking about this because this is just like a simple game mechanic that should just be in the game, but I'm praising it because the last 2 games didn't have it. Tinykin will also make sounds on beat when carrying things, and I forgot to mention, but there's dynamic music that will change depending on your environment. Here I am inside of a guitar, so the music now has that. The Tinykin will follow on beat no matter what song is playing, and it's such a unique touch, most game devs never would think about. Another little neat detail about the Tinykins is whenever you get a new one, the title screen will be different depending on what Tinykin you got. Overall, this review was quite longer than I expected, but boy was this game a treat from start to finish. I wish for a good Pikmin clone game, and I finally got my wish. And I honestly feel bad calling it a Pikmin clone game. Because like I said before, this game may have a similar game mechanic to Pikmin, but it does it in a different way to make it worth playing over Pikmin. Never once did I sit here while playing and go, man, I wish I was playing Pikmin. I was wishing that I would continue playing Tinykin. I'm not saying that this game is better than Pikmin because I still have not played the Pikmin series, but I can say that for someone who loves Pikmin, this is a good alternative if you're waiting for Pikmin 4. Because even though it does, like I said, have similarities to Pikmin, it does it well enough to make it different enough to where you will not feel like that you're wasting your time. Also, for those wondering, the next Pikmin clone game is going to be about a character that is a Nintendo IP. So that being said, thanks for watching, guys, and have a great day. Goodbye.